Hey, everybody. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, everybody who's taken the time, of course, to follow along on the show. We have another one of our special 4-hour roundtables lined up for you this evening. So without further ado, guys, let's get this party rolling. Just real quick, guys. Again, if you're watching us for the first time, you can check us out on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/made from scratch broadcast. Do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. We are always trying to build our viewership there, and hit the notification bell. It will let you know whenever we schedule new lives, whenever we are live, and whenever we drop new content on the channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Then, of course, we are streaming live, of course, on all other social media platforms. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and of course LinkedIn. So if you're following along on any of those channels, guys, thank you so much as always. So let's get to the business of what we got going on this evening, because we do have one of our special tables lined up for you guys. So let me start off first of all by introducing each one of our guests. So I'm going to go, there's no particular order. We're just going to start introducing everybody and bring them in so we can start the conversation. So I'm going to start with Julian Caesar. He is a business consultant, actor, forex trader, and overall entrepreneur. He's the founder of the media tech brand CloutFinder LLC, which specializes in building relationships and empowering content creators. Please welcome to the show this evening, Julian Caesar. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Gabe?
I am doing wonderful. So let's start with our next guest. Her name is Future Cain. She's an educator, certified yoga instructor who specializes in social emotional learning, SEL, to enhance the education, health, and business fields. So, guys, please help me welcome to the show, Miss Future Cain. How are you doing, Future?
Hello. I'm feeling I'm peaceful and centered today.
Hey, those are always two good things to be. So I will take those any day of the week. So let's start with our next guest. Her name is the absolutely wonderful friend of mine, Mila DeChant. She is a culture and diversity scientist whose mission is to erase poverty of the mind and hearts with humanity starting at the workplace. So please help me welcome to the show my dear friend, Miss Mila DeChant. Hello, Mila. How are you doing?
Hi, Gabe. Thank you for having me on Roll.
Thank you so much. So everybody's got smiles on so far. I'm loving this. So let's start with our next guest. Her name is Susan Childs. She is a human resources business leader, cable programming executive, consultant, and inclusion, and the Black Experience champion. So guys, please help me welcome to the show, Susan Childs. How are you doing, Susan? Oh, you got your mic mute.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
There we go. Awesome.
I followed orders backstage, and I didn't follow when I came up.
That's okay. We'll take them as they come. So next is Rabbi Robert Wolkoff. He serves the congregation Ben-I, that's hard to say, but I'm going to say TIC-VU in North Brunswick, New Jersey. He has published hundreds of articles and lectured internationally on Jewish topics and has been active in both interfaith work and the struggles against anti-Semitism. So please help me welcome to the show, Rabbi Robert Wolkoff. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, doing well. Good to be here. Thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you, sir. No, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to do this. So our next guest, his name is Omar Abdelreheim. He's the government quarterback. He's a consultant business manager that teaches businesses how to sell products and services to the government. Guys, help me welcome to the show, Omar. How you doing, sir? Oh. A little bit audio issue there, but that's okay. We'll work on it. There you go. Matt is okay, cool. And now let's go ahead and start with our next guest. And excuse me. His name is Joe Michael Nickson. He's a charismatic natural-born strategist and the chief creative officer of Concrates, an agency powered by formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated individuals. Very interesting person. I've seen him on Adam Posner's show. So please welcome to the show, Joe Michael Nicholson.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
Hey, how you doing?
Wonderful, loving life. I just welcomed my son less than a week ago. I have no sleep, but I am energetic.
There you go. Congratulations, man. Welcome to the wonderful world of fatherhood. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a father of 4, so it is awesome. And of course, guys, help me welcome to the show my co-host and partner in crime, the gentleman who helped me stream and put all this together. Without him, this wouldn't be possible. Welcome to the show, Mr. Michael Padurano. How are you doing, sir?
Doing all right. How's everybody else?
Everybody's got smiles, bro. So
that's all that matters.
So I am happy about that. And of course, we have one more guest coming. As soon as he gets here, I will introduce him. But let's go ahead and get started with the show because we do have 2 hours. And believe it or not, it will go by so fast, guys. So just again to start the conversation, we are talking about, of course, the issue of systemic racism. And, well, how about we do this, guys? Since he's here, let me go ahead and introduce the final guest of the show. He is a TEDx keynote speaker, mindset coach, author, rule breaker, and bulletproof optimist. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Matt Gagnon.
I'm sorry I'm late. My apologies. Hey. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes,
You're
sir.
hey, just fine, sir. Love it.
Fantastic.
Everybody's got smiles.
He's got the relaxed face.
That is the way to be, though. I love that. So I know everybody's got smiles on, guys. We do have some serious topics to break into this evening. So let's go ahead and start with the first question. And thank you, Miss Mila, for helping me come up with this one. So, guys, question number 1, I'm going to ask the first 4 panelists on top. So that will be Julius, Future, Mila, and Susan. Let's start, number 1, with what are some of the systems that are in place that we need to become aware of when we're addressing the issue of systemic racism? So, Julius, let's go ahead and start with you, and we will work our way down to Miss Susan.
Okay, so I think when we think about systemic racism, that we have to be understanding that it is something that is embedded in our entire culture across the board. So there's not really just one system that you can target. That's going, by attacking that system, you're going to cleanse the whole problem, because it is a complete cultural thing, and it's going to take a while to even rewire the way we teach our children to look at each other to really solve this problem. Now, if we had to, attack one, or if I had to choose one area to attack to begin with, it would be the incarceration system. A very good book on that is The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander, I believe. And it's a great rendition of just how our prison system is designed to still just target minority communities, and just a lot of the ramifications of how that, stems through almost every part of our society today. Wait, are you saying something, Gabe? I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, brother.
Mute. I was on mute. Sorry about that, guys. So I was just posing the question to Miss Future Cain. So same question. How do you feel about that?
Well, obviously, living as a biracial woman, I don't feel great, right, about the systemic racism, because I've had to live it for 40-something years. But what I will say is important, and Julian, I think you have a great point, right? We would want to eradicate all different systems, and one of those is the system of the jail, right? The school to prison pipeline is what some people categorize it as. But what I would personally say is education. It starts with the educational foundation, and that's why I'm on literally a mission to help educate people on what social emotional learning is, because if we could teach our children at a very early age at their homes and in our schools, early childhood centers, and then K through 12 system and post-secondary education, that we should be accepting of all, then we could start to eradicate what this is. We should be accepting of all. We should be celebrating all. We should be teaching this in schools so that people have an understanding and one race or culture isn't superior over another, or other people are made to feel inferior, because all of those systems then wouldn't probably lead to our kids being put in the school to prison pipeline.
Wonderful, wonderful answer. So, Miss Mila DeChant.
Two beautiful points that Julian and Future had mentioned about the incarceration and the education system. So there are so many systems in places, right? I would also add to those 2 points as to the workplace, society as a whole, right? Even religious congregations, how those systems are put in place to discriminate other races, right? You can't say, I'm a Christian, God tells us to love everyone, and yet you attack someone who's sitting outside of a church and saying that you do not belong here. But I'd like to also focus on the workplace, right? Workplace is such another huge component as to how people belong in. People spend 70 to 80 hours a day of their awake time at work. And that composes of how people treat, right? Because your workplace is no longer a singular plane. As we become more global, more localized, we are going to have people who look different than us, who sound different than us, right? So we need to focus on how the workplace creates all these systems within the organization and puts places like that gatekeeps other people from moving forward or moving together to get equity.
Miss Childs, how do you feel about
That's
that?
a perfect segue, Mila. It's like you and I did homework together or something. So so the incarceration was on my list, but I went on to let you have it, Julie. And I have 2 sons that are correction officers, and boy, I can talk a mouthful on that one. So amen to you on that. Around the workplace as well. But from a different perspective, I've had the advantage of working in 60 different cultures and seeing the incredible what I call industrial racism. And that has not gone away. And folks are in my generation will sort of know this movement. And what we're talking about when we say industrial racism is this built-in system beyond just a glass ceiling for women, but we see a brick wall for anyone who isn't like those that are on top. So it's I used to teach about the glass ceiling with women, but then the layers bring us into the next segment. And this gets to the most important thing that's protected in these industrial racist structures, and that is the wealth gap. It's all about managing that wealth gap. And I have been on the HR table, like I said, 60 different countries, but ultimately it comes down to the man's role in the home. How many women sitting on this panel and told that when they were asking about a raise or interviewing that, well, he's the breadwinner. And that's still happening today in 2020. So let me just be clear. I've got a big passion on this subject of industrial racism, what I call the because you're different brick wall ceiling. And that really leads us to that wealth gap.
Good answer. So, Mr. Padurano, would you like to answer the question, sir?
I pass. I think every system. I think it's so deeply rooted that I think it goes beyond a single system. I think that it is the whole system. I feel like it's every single system is touched by some type of hatred, and we can speak about racism in this case. We can speak about religious persecution, sexual preference persecution, any type of persecution we want. It all comes down to the same things. I always go back to the education backbone. I feel that we are teaching kids to recognize labels. We are pointing out differences. We are labeling people too young. We are giving kids the okay to desensitize them and let them feel that giving labels and just accepting labels is okay. And once they move forward and grow through that process, I feel like it's a matter of it just becomes the accepted norm, right? And then as kids get meaner and older, they get meaner and older, right? So it goes from the accepted norm to, extreme bullying. I feel like social media is a blessing and a curse, because social media has also brought out people to defend those that are getting bullied, but it's also make the bullying worse, right? And you see extremes on all levels right now. I can't choose one system. I think they're all broken, and the only way to change this is to go to the youngest of the youngest, and change them from the ground up, because it will filter upwards through the age groups. Because if the youth is pushing it, then from that point forward, they will push it through the older generations, and it will suffocate it over time. It will suffocate it. Not only that, they're faster on social media, so let's not kid ourselves.
Exactly.
I mean, they can post 10 times in the time I can post once, right? And I'm pretty decent. So I feel like it's bigger than that, and that's where I feel like it needs to start.
Okay, so that's like awesome. That's leading into our next question, and the one I want to pose for the next 4 panelists. So, Mr. Matt, question for the next 4 panelists is: how do we break down each one of these systems that were eventually just talked about by our other panelists?
How do we break it down? Well, I honestly, I couldn't help but align with what Future and Mike were saying. I don't know if I'm going to answer the question or not, but education is probably the most passionate thing that's been on my mind lately. And there are things too, for me, that I'm still learning that's new. I've always had an incredible open mind, but then I'm having a conversation the other day with a friend of mine who's Black, and he's breaking down scenarios and thought processes that I never thought of that he has to go through every day. Like, one of the things that blew my mind is he's a highly intelligent human being, and I love this man, like family to me. And he tells me that when he goes into a new circle of white friends, he has to dumb himself down in order to not intimidate them, because he's 6'4", big deep voice, and he's a great human being, but he says he has to dumb himself down to feel accepted and not intimidate them. And then eventually he starts to show how articulate. And I'm like, what? And then he tells me about the fear he has about driving home when he comes to visit certain parts of town that are really nice. And he goes, look, I know you guys give me a hard time about not coming out certain nights, but he goes, you don't understand. I'm driving a Jag, nice car, driving through a very nice up and coming neighborhood. He goes, I beeline it for the highway as fast as I can so I can get home. He goes, because I get pulled over all the time for nothing. And I'm like, are you serious? And that stuff really bums me out. And once somebody asked me once, like, hey, if you could do anything to fix in this world, what would it be? I was like, man, I just like to cure, get rid of hatred and ignorance. And someone said, so you mean you want to educate people? I was like, yeah. I was like, because pretty much education is the cure for almost all of our problems in this world, and education is it. And I got to tell you, I've had some real heartbreaking moments. There are things that I take accountability for in the past I just was clueless about, where I was being offensive and I had no idea. Education at my age too is like, someone once said all lives matter. I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. Yeah, all lives matter. And then I was like, why are people so mad about that? I don't get it. Why is everyone so mad about it? And then I looked it up and I started researching. I was like, oh shit, that's offensive. I was like, I'm a life coach, man. And I'm like, I would never dismiss one of my clients' problems if they said, man, I'm going through depression right now. And I said, well, everybody has bad days, that's awful, And I think the example too of like, you go to a cancer rally and be like, all diseases matter. I was offended at myself, but education, just a quick little thing made total sense where I thought it was totally harmless and it made sense to me. And then I see children, though. That's the thing that's heartbreaking the most, is when I see children speaking just pure hatred. And that was taught to them. It breaks my heart to see somebody who just was born into this world and was immediately fed hatred. Yeah. And I can't stand that at a cellular level. That bothers me. So I'm probably not answering the question, but I was just so wound up from the first one. And this whole topic on education, that's just the cure for me.
I think that's one of the things that again, it's really important. And even talking about children. So Joe Michael just had a son, and he's bringing him into the world, right? And it's such a wonderful thing to witness the gift of life. And I think that would be one of the things that, going forward, hopefully his son won't have to see as much of because of conversations like this. So same question to you, Mr. Nickson. How do we break down some of these systems that were mentioned by some of our aforementioned panelists?
Well, that's amazing, because I would like to share with you. Once I cut the umbilical cord, I vowed to my son. His name is Jackson. I named him Jackson Maximus. And Jackson, I promised him that when he comes of age from his father's work, because I'm in the ad space and I work with some of the biggest companies in the world, he's going to be judged by being a jerk if he's a jerk, and not by the color of his skin from my work. And that is a goal that I have to do. And that is a goal that I invite everyone here to embark on. I have a personal story with my grandfather in regards to equality in the United States of America. And he was a World War II vet. And they were so amped at the time of being the GI Bill, because coming home and being home, and I'm going to get my life together, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, only to come home to find out he was front line, and this country was like, the GI Bill, it works, but not for you, Mr. Nickson. And we can't tell you by the color of the skin. Like me personally, I'm affected by the criminal justice system. First and foremost, I did 17 and a half years in a federal prison for conspiracy to commit. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I robbed a whole lot of banks. I robbed about 45 banks. And I got away with it because I had to learn that I'm not a bank robber. I'm a strategist. If I can successfully convince a group of people to do something 37 times and get away with it, I have a unique skill set. But in my environment and where I am from, I don't know this. I didn't know that I can get a doctor's salary for being a creative strategist. I didn't know these things. And it goes to the point when you guys are talking about education and opportunities. We've created one of the biggest workforces in the world. We've allowed individuals that are incarcerated right now for nonviolent offenses to work and show their work to some of the biggest companies in the world. But nobody knows that they're there, and they are not listening. I just did a campaign with Adidas. I can't get into it right now, but when you guys see it, it's going to shake the world up. But who would have thought that Adidas would come beckoning to a guy who was just out of federal prison to fix their company's problem and their messaging after the wake of George Floyd? These other ad agencies, they can't do it because they have a problem with their messaging. They're scratching their heads with 12 Caucasians in the room saying, what do they want? Well, first of all, you have to get one of what they want in the room. And we participate in active listening, acknowledgement, and action. Once you active listen, no one wants to listen. In the United States of America, the race problem is this, and I'll simplify it. If you're saying that it's systematic racism and your life is hunky-dory and you're Caucasian and everything is beautiful, and someone is telling you that the only reason why you're successful is because these other people didn't have those opportunities. It's not because you're smart and you're sharp and you're all of that. And that acknowledgement that nobody wants to address is the problem. If you don't have an acknowledgement, an active listening and action, we're going to be doing the same thing Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was doing to no avail.
Yeah, wonderful. Love that. Okay, Omar. Uh-oh. I think we might have some audio. Okay.
I'm a lip reader. I've seen one word.
Oh, that's okay. I was just trying to ask Omar his answer to the question as well.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
I had to change mics. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I'll tell you this much. I think a big part of the problem is I agree with a lot of people where we have to start in our farm system, which is our kids, and start them young, right? Now, the interesting part is what influences young kids nowadays, right? So it's music, it's media, it's the news, it's all of this information that's coming out from outside sources, right? And perfect example, I'm a Muslim, I'm from North Africa. I'm born there. I grew up there for a little part of my life. I came here, served in the military. I'm a disabled vet. And until the media narrative after 9/11, it was okay to be a Muslim in this country. But from 9/11 until Donald Trump took office, because I think, I don't like the guy, and I apologize if I offend anyone there, but the one thing he did do is he took the media's focus off of Muslims. I mean, if anybody walked down the street and someone killed someone, they said, oh, his great grandfather was a Muslim back from blah, 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 right? So it was like that for quite some time. So I think the media plays a major role. And I absolutely think the music industry plays a big role, because the music is what the kids are listening to. And that's what influences a lot of these kids, and even these games. So, the message, the whole narrative, if you look at the whole body of work, right? And I agree with Mike and everyone else that says the entire system is broken, from that regard. And that's what, if you're getting it from all angles at all times, then by default, you're going to believe it, right? And you're going to buy into it, whether you're the victim, whether you're the oppressor or the oppressed, right? So one way or the other. So I think really that, if we can just really, basically the reason why we have racism and all that, because we just don't understand each other, right? We just say, okay, you're different than me, then you can't be as good as me, right? Or, there's a problem. Because you don't look like me, right? Or you don't talk like me, or you don't walk like me, right? So I think first and foremost, we really need to educate each other about each other. I think once we start to understand each other, we don't have to love each other. We don't have to walk out hugging and loving and all that. But what we need to do is we need to understand each other. Like, hey, listen, what is it? Why do you do that? Or what's behind that? Or what motivates you, or what drives you, or what scares you, And I think if we just at least make the attempt, to understand each other, like, with all intention. I mean, like, that's the intent. Like, hey, I'm just not asking you just whatever. No, like I sincerely want to understand you, And I think once we understand all the different challenges that we face and the whys behind it, then and only then can we actually put up a plan to resolve it. Because right now you can't fix what you don't know is broken, right? So first we have to identify what's broken, and then we have to extend that messaging out through those channels to bring people together, right? And the bottom line is the only way we're going to do it is we have to understand each other. I think we just have to sincerely make that attempt. And I think if you just sincerely do it, the person on the other side is going to say, they're going to sense it. You're going to say, you know what? All right, you're real. All right, this is what it's all about. This is what's going on. This is how I feel. And then and only then, I think, is when we can actually come up with some sort of plan, right, to try to fix it. I mean, there isn't like this one thing, if you do, it's going to solve the world's problems, right? It just doesn't work that way. But we are a unique country in the sense that we are a melting pot. There's someone from every country in the world, from all walks of life. We have every color skin. We have all the different dialects, accents. We walk. There's so many different walks and, things that we do in education. So it just makes sense that with who we are as a country, that we take a lead on this. And we're not the only country that faces this, by the way. I've traveled to many countries, been in the military, and I've experienced, racism and discrimination in many different places, right? And so but I think here we have the platform, we're afforded the opportunity and the platform that we can actually do something with it. So in answer to your question, I just think, first of all, we got to, one, identify we got a problem. Two, we have to understand each other and understand what these problems are, right? And then after that, then we can actually devise a plan that brings it all together. And then we can execute. So, that's just my thoughts on that. And I'm done right there. But that was basically my thoughts on how do we fix something like this.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. And we'll jump in this too a little bit,
Real quick.
bit more. So, again, to Rabbi, same question, and then from there we'll go into the open discussion part about this, guys.
Okay. There's a classic Jewish expression that says that you should never judge a person until you stand in their shoes. And in the little bit that I've engaged in this question, I've been stunned by the inability of supposedly mature and educated adults to try and understand what it is that other people are experiencing. I saw a meme a while back that said, if somebody raped your wife and kidnapped your kids, where do you think we should put up the statue for them? And I wish that white people that have judgments about, oh, gee, slavery was so long ago, what's the big deal? I wish that they sort of had that and had to think about nothing else but that for 24 hours.
Right.
And the idea that we have to actually have a discussion about whether we should make heroes out of people who were, murderers and rapists, it's like, it actually boggles the mind. And the degree to which people are willing to sort of wrap themselves in a cloak of virtue and self-accomplishment. I made it, so why can't everybody make it? Having no idea of the barriers that are put up, whether it's the incarceration issues, whether it's the redlining and the economic discrimination, whether it's simply the fear of driving down the street, and people are just incapable of putting themselves in the shoes of other people who are experiencing that. And I think one thing, it's an odd thing. I mean, to say that there's anything good that comes out of coronavirus, that's a pretty odd statement. But there's one thing to think about, and that is that all of a sudden the invisible people that are bagging groceries and janitors in the hospitals, all of a sudden these people have become essential workers. And it's not just the guys that drive around in the Jaguar or the guys in the white shoes at the country club, but it's the people, everyday people that are out there doing the job and making sure that the world continues to work, that all of a sudden their human worth and their human dignity starts to matter. And the more that we build on that, and the more that we challenge people to open up, to show a little bit of humanity for other people. I'll just segue to one other thing. There's this horrible expression, you don't hear it much these days, but the welfare queen. And it's like, people who criticize people who need help have no clue what life is like for somebody who's struggling, maybe holding down 2 jobs, has all just a vast array, and you guys know better than I do, vast array of challenges that they have to face. And meanwhile, people have been living off of the Small Business Administration loans that they were able to get, and the mortgages that they were able to get, and watch their wealth grow in ways that were shut off to a whole bunch of other people. And so again, that they have the fantasy, oh, that I just made it. Now, it's not that people didn't work hard. Maybe they did work hard, but people should recognize that the deck is stacked against a very, very large part of our population. Black people in particular, but immigrants more broadly, and there's a whole array. And to not have that awareness, to me, is mind-boggling. Like, how could you be so blind as to not see that this is a reality for people?
Yes, wonderful answer. So guys, now that we've talked about a lot of the problems, a lot of the things that we've seen, a lot of the things we've lived, a lot of the experiences that we've actually dealt with in our lives, the next question is, how do we start to address these in ways that we can actually find really actionable solutions? What are some of the things that we can actually do to make an impact that each one of us have the ability to go out and do? So guys, I'm going to open the forum to anybody who wants to chime in and start.
So I opened my mic first, so I'm going to jump right
Go right ahead.
You want to go first? You can go first if you want, girl. I've been dancing in my chair since the bottom row talks.
Well, let's go. Ladies first. So any of you ladies want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go.
You're welcome to the floor.
So I'm going to jump into the education bucket, because let's be clear. We were sort of picking them, and of course, education and awareness and this ability to understand that there is a stubbornness that comes from white privilege that is in play here. This is why it's systemic. So let's be clear. There's also a difference between systematic injustices and systemic injustices. And I really want to make that distinction here. My mother was a civil rights advocate. My whole family was. And she's the one, when I was starting my work again after May 25th and the murder of George Floyd and others, that I sat down at her feet again and said, here we go again, Rodney King, I can call the names off. And she said, don't let people confuse systemic from systematic. Systematic is going to be a process and step-by-step rule book that people will follow either through habit or not. But systemic it's because I'm supposed to. Systemic is because I'm supposed to. And because I'm supposed to right now in America is based on white fragility / white privilege. So we have to be able to say that out loud comfortably and then move that dialogue. So education, Matt, you really struck my heart. You're right. Education is significant, the passion that you feel. But to be able to get folks in a room and have that sensitive and sensing conversation where we keep the understanding real. I'm doing sensing sessions now with in my industry, in the pharmaceutical and biotechnical industry, highly paid folks. And that's why I talked about the money thing. So I just really want you to understand that there is an answer, and is getting people in the room and having the very honest, sensitive conversation and dialogue around white privilege, and by showing them the antithesis. An example, I start my presentation talking about the 400 years. Let's take a step back and talk about the 400 years that led us to today. And I've had almost every single time someone say, well, the Civil War was only 200 years ago. So folks are thinking the Civil War is when this all began, but we were kidnapped. So this is the kind of language we have to be comfortable to start having. We also have to be able to have a dialogue that doesn't always say, why do people burn the neighborhoods down? I ask people to say, what would cause a person to burn their neighborhood down? That means you want to hear my answer. When you say why you've judged me, you already have an opinion in your head, and it's going to matter what I say. But we teach, what my sessions talk very, very carefully to those that are interested in becoming an anti-racist. And there's some great work out there. Everyone knows it, Ibram Jendi's work, that talks about feel, think, and act. And the way you're going to feel is how you ask the question. So it's there, but how you do it is important.
Awesome. What a wonderful answer. Future, please.
Okay. So those of you who are linked to me know I'm literally on my pedestal that is teaching everybody. I can't have a courageous conversation and be vulnerable with anybody on this panel, with my spouse, with my friends, with my coworkers, unless I have sat with myself as a person. And it's going to take possibly months, years, and years, because as I said before to the private chat, we are Houdinis of sitting with our emotions. We will do anything to mind numb because they're difficult, they're painful, they're traumatic. But if you can't sit with yourself and understand what your biases are, what your prejudices are, how you act, what you say, how you react, what you choose not to say to somebody when you know they're wrong, then we will not be able to move forward with any of this work. In addition, I will add, we need to look at the laws and we need to look at the policies, because that's where a lot of this is coming from too.
What a
And that's the systemic and systematic.
Yeah, that's I love that fire. Mila.
Sure. Well, I absolutely love what Future and Susan had chat. I want to acknowledge something that Omar and Rabbi had chat just now. A very common theme that both of you spoke about, acceptance, right? And that aligns really well with what everyone has been speaking about. Changing the narrative, right? Like understanding each other. How do we understand each other rather than asking the question, where are you really from? Which country are you really from? How about shifting that narrative and understanding each other? What's the first question that you ask when you meet people, right? Like, find common grounds to connect as opposed to which country are you from? I've had people say, I love curries. Like, what the bloody hell are you trying to tell me? Like, right? That's such a dismissive narrative as well. So we need to change the narratives. How are we connecting with people, right? And also, I would like to pinpoint, like, highlight something. Education is great, but at the same time, we can have all the education, but when a person is not willing to open their hearts and minds, that discrimination will never be dismantled. Even if a child, right, where does it start? At home. Like, I hear a lot of parents saying at the playground, do not play with that black child, do not play with that immigrant child, because they're dirty, they can't speak English, they're different than you. I've witnessed it not just in the United States, it happens in different parts of the world. So it happens at home as well. So education has got to be all around the plane. It's not just for children. But at the same time, when people say, you know, you're taught to hate, but at the same time, when you reach an age to make your own educated decisions, a shift has got to happen in your mind, and most importantly, it has got to happen in your hearts. So action happens when we ourselves are willing to question ourselves and say, why does it affect me? Why is this making me so uncomfortable? Why am I angry looking at the immigrant? Why am I angry looking at the black person? We need to start questioning. It's just not with black people. I've met fellow immigrants who look at black people and are afraid. So you need to start asking those questions. What is it that is making you uncomfortable? Why is it making you angry or uncomfortable? We need to start having those important questions by digging deeper before we go forward.
Thank you so much, Mila. Matt.
Hey.
Come on in, brother.
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go in here.
I'm ready to go.
Bring it, baby.
I look like a total a-hole with this cigar and drink over here. I'm on vacation with it's my 15-year wedding anniversary.
Hey,
and,
congratulations, man. I just celebrated 23 years, so I know.
Man, 15 years in a row. Things are going well. So, look, there's the education piece, and I think of this a lot too with kids. But then what do we do with these adults? You know, because we got to deal with these adults that are real pain in the ass right now too. And I'm trying to find a way to come at some of my friends with some grace, because they grew up with this education and being it drilled in their face. And these are grown ass adults that just talk with total ignorance. And I'm like, how do I show you some grace and help you along the way? Because if I just come at them screaming, then nothing gets accomplished. They just put up a wall and then they just start speaking gibberish. And I've seen that happen with people talking about face mask, Black Lives Matter. I mean, just savages coming out, like highly intelligent human beings turning to total savages over some of these topics. And Mila, you're so right. It's when something gets you that fired up, I always ask people, what is it you can't be with? What is it you can't be with? Because typically there's this acorn of truth that you see in something that you see in yourself that's bugging the shit out of you, you know? And so there's some truth in that too. I've had to find ways, because what I've noticed is people don't fight fair. Like, and this is what I mean by that. There's something that's really important right now. And the first thing that I share that with one of my friends about this whole movement and racism, what's going on. And my friend immediately wants to bring up statistics. Well, statistically speaking, and that's their counterpoint. I'm like, really? I'm like, we're going to go there. I'm like, have you ever had an argument with your spouse and you bring up some other stuff from the past and she's going to hear you on that? I'm like, that's not going to work. I'm like, this isn't your hill to die on right now. Listen, just listen right now. Don't bring in 5 other topics. Let's focus on this one right now. You know, it's the same thing I've heard right now. People are talking about, you know, police brutality. And all of a sudden, one of my friends says, well, you know, the biggest problem right now is black on black crime. I'm like, no, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about this. Stay on this. And that's the thing people have a hard time with, is staying focused on something. So educating people, these grown ass adults, on how to actually have an argument, this will benefit them in the rest of their lives too, is a really, really big deal. And so, I mean, I've had to dumb it down for some of my friends too. Even when we talk about tearing down these statues and stuff, seeing some of my friends get so worked up about this, I had to dumb it down to the level of like, who builds a statue of the second place team? You go to Buffalo, you think they got 4 like second place Super Bowl statues lined up out there? Like, and that's the only way I can connect to some of these people. But it's upsetting to me but that's where we're at. I think we need to teach adults how to actually have a fair argument sometimes and just listen, and that we actually might accomplish some stuff. But then again, there are some people that, I hate to say it, are just so in their ways, they're a lost cause. And we need to know when to stop fighting that. Like, look, I've had some big arguments with people before, and then I've had to realize, you're not my battle today. I'm going to go to somebody else who's actually willing to listen, you know, and hopefully we get enough people willing to listen. Those other people are going to be in a very small group, and they're no longer going to be relevant anymore. So that's what I'd say is encouragement to everybody else. When you find yourself in a deeply heated argument with somebody who is just unreasonable, there's nothing you can do to be reasonable with them. They're on their own journey. Find somebody else who's willing to at least have that foundation cracked and willing to listen to you. That's all I got.
Oh, man. Awesome. Julian, please.
Sure. And just to build on what Matt was saying, and just to kind of keep it streamlined in my thoughts, there's 3 things I think we can focus on that's really going to move the needle in a very powerful way. 1 is accountability, 2 is empowerment, and 3 is communication. And so when I say accountability, you know, it's, you know, one form of that is legal accountability and financial accountability. So let's take what's going on with police brutality, for example. There is no liability insurance that police are forced to have. So when they do something that is, you know, outside of what they're called to do on a racially biased, you know, manner, what happens? You know, they may get specifically sued, but who pays that? Those are tax dollars that are out of, you know, taxpayers' budgets to pay these civil suits for these police misgivings. And it's actually getting to a point where it's so crazy that like different states have to go to Wall Street and take out bonds and to cover these charges. And so now not only are you taxpayers having to pay, you know, the civic costs for these lawsuits, but they're also having to pay interest on these lawsuits because we don't have the budgets in place. And so police officers have to get liability insurance, like they're a doctor, for example, and something goes wrong. Then I think they're going to be, you know, whether they're a, you know, good cop or a bad cop or however you want to put it, they're going to be more likely to do what's right because there's economic incentive that's keeping them accountable for their actions. So that's one example of accountability. Another one, like second thing, like I said, was empowerment. So I'm a big believer that, you know, we can educate all we want, but if these communities don't have economic resources, they're not going to be in power or have the leverage to really fight for themselves. And so if we're going to be focusing on education, it's, I think going into the future of the economy to be financial and technological education, so that, these communities know how to generate capital online, or, make money so that they can have, cash flow flowing through these different communities, and it can be passed on, and we can establish some sort of economic base. And then the third thing is, because I can go on the first two forever, is communication, where I'll just go on my own personal experiences. I've had, like Matt, a lot of different conversations on race, from the start of Corona, but I've had to have these conversations from the perspective of a Black man who's, 6'3", and has gone to like a predominantly white college in Maryland, and has been called the N-word at, a party, and I had to walk away from it. And then I have that guy can grow a conscience and try to have me punch him in the face for their whole party, ruining my night. And I have to like deal with that. Like, but if I punch him, maybe it escalates, and if I don't, then, that can put me in trouble. And if I don't, then I have this guy on my back for my whole night. Or just having conversations with people who have backgrounds that, they don't understand what's going on. And instead of, yelling at them like Matt would say, or, trying to just shove down their throat, a perspective they don't have the mental frameworks to understand. I have to, have the conversation where I listen to their statistics, and I help them, and I have to be more educated than them on the topic, so I can show them how these statistics are not actually fact. They may be a fact, but they're not framed properly to actually give you the truth. And, here are some other statistics that you need to be, aware of, that's going to actually give you a better picture, but it also explains these statistics that you have in the first place. And so I think through accountability, economic empowerment, and, communication, those are like three of the main tipping points where we have to really focus our energy if we really want to have a realistic shot of making improvement now.
I agree. And allow me to interject a tad bit, because you hit on some points that are just so dear to my heart. And one of the reasons I want to share with you guys that I am here right now speaking with you is because I found a jet fuel. And I know there's a sensitive topic around reparations, but I personally found my own reparations. And that's why I'm here with you guys today speaking. And it's called equity, and it's called C-suite. And I am allowed, because I kicked the door with my fellow cohorts. We kicked the door in the ad space. We understood that the ad space was an $84 billion a year industry. Yet everyone wants to rap and speak, and they want to do this, and because they're not introduced to this. That equity is jet fuel for reparations. Within 2 days of federal prison, being released, because of I understood what was going on, I was in Fast Company magazine. I was in Entrepreneur magazine. I was doing ads with some of the biggest brands out here. It's because I understood what was going on. I said, okay, you're not going to listen to me unless I am a voting block or something similar to such. So how do I input myself into that? And that equity and that C-suite, we have something called the C-suite challenge. Some of your favorite companies, just look them up right now. Facebook, whatever is in your portfolio, what you're investing in. How many people of color are in the C-suite? None. There are none. But those are the people who are making decisions. Those are the voting blocks. These are the people who are doing things now. I am here with you guys only because we kicked in the door, and I am considered a chief creative officer. That is the only reason. That meant because I made this company such and such amounts of millions per. Now you're going to listen to me. Damn that I've been in prison 17 years. You're capable of doing this. So be it. And that equity is the that's our even playing field. That is our even playing field, and nobody is talking about that. No one is asking for charity, but just give me an opportunity, because we at Concreates believe that creativity without opportunity leads to criminality. And this is, and I'm speaking from experience here. These people have no choice. They don't know anything. They don't see it. They don't know. They've been behind the 8 ball their whole life. Just look, because I wanted to ask the rabbi how, if he's familiar with the situation going on with Nick Cannon right now. And why I asked that is because of history is what it is, but you can not deny that if I am Jesus and I'm going and I'm hiding and we are in Egypt and we're hiding successfully, damn it, there's some people of color over here somewhere. And to acknowledge the African Americans feel like, how can I be anti-Semitic when I feel as I am of the Semitic people? I have no gripe with you whatsoever. And there are just conversations and conversations and conversations that need to be had. And I believe that we so are in a quick to hurry to listen, to respond, instead of listening to understand. Don't put how you feel about the situation with that person. And like you guys are speaking about, put yourself in someone else's shoes. And before you make an argument about this being about the flag, no, it was never about that. It was about the unjust opportunities that my people are experiencing. Mm-hmm. And Miss Future, as an educator, my wife is also an educator, and we were dabbling on something, and we were going about the curriculums in school. And basically, a lot of things aren't taught because it is designed to teach us to be patriotic. We cannot see the flaws of this country. What we did wrong, yes, slavery, you guys get over that. It's no big deal. But everything is taught for us to be patriotic. So if I say that I didn't agree with Thomas Jefferson moving forward and him having slavery, well, you can go to another country. Wait a minute. But the man was not right. The man was not. He didn't do things that are considered to be a hero. And this is where we are right now. And it's just a very exciting time, because I believe collectively that we are finally having these conversations, that Karen won't dictate this next election. Just believe that. Just believe that. Karen won't be a factor in this election.
So, Rabbi, would you care to answer?
Yeah, well, if you want me to get into it, I mean, listen, how exactly Hollywood functions, I have no idea. I'm here in New Jersey, right? I don't know anything about the way Hollywood functions. And to the extent that there is discrimination or people who are doing creative work not being appropriately compensated for the work that they're doing and so forth, I'm not going to get into that because I don't know anything about that, other than to say, people should be compensated for the creative work that they do. All right. But when somebody's running around like quoting Hitler, there's a problem here. And you don't have to go real far to realize that there's a problem here. And there's altogether too much of that. I would mention, I don't want to push the point real hard because I think it takes us a little bit away from our topic. But, Minister Farrakhan is, for us Jews, a real problematic figure. He's a gutter anti-Semite. And anti-Semite here meaning Jew hater. And regardless of what else he points out about racism, right, and there, as we all agree, there's an awful lot to point out about racism, to oppress somebody else in order to make that point is inappropriate and profoundly objectionable. Now, my understanding is that Nick Cannon has had some discussions with some rabbis who have sort of opened up to a kind of educational process, and that's great. I'm not, I don't have like a hit list or a blacklist or anything like that. It's we all need to be educated and learn, but there's stuff that's just over the line, and it's we should know that by now. We should all know that by now.
And I think to build on what you're saying, because I'm aware of the Nick Cannon situation, and I actually have been, in communication with people in the Nation of Islam who look to Louis Farrakhan as a leader.
Yeah.
And so it's a dynamic that I'm definitely torn on, because there are some things that are said, that I just fundamentally disagree with within that community of that portion of the Black community. I do believe that a lot of those misguided thoughts come from a lot of systematic pain, and how people have processed a lot of systematic pain. And if you oppress a group of people for years and years and years, there's going to be a lot of anger that is on the back end, and a lot of it, how it's funneled, may not always be healthy, because if you brutalize the people for hundreds of years, how do you process it? How do you rationalize, the hatred you receive, and your people have received from being, enslaved, raped, killed, and everything like that, and say, why do people hate me? And so I don't agree with a lot of the things that they say, but I understand. But it's also very hard the reason why there's a lot of momentum around that group is because there's a lot of great work that they do within the Black community.
Sure.
Like, they are one of the groups that have actually not only just shown like we're pro-Black, but they're going into the communities. They're providing a lot of the education that we say that these communities need on how to financially empower themselves and how to come together and how to move forward. And so I think with Nick Cannon, not everything he said was wrong, but there were some things that you cannot argue against that. Like, you can't stand for this. And I think it was very powerful for Nick Cannon, who is a very educated person himself, to, recognize that, yes, I've been taught within my community, but I'm open to, having these conversations with these rabbis and seeing where maybe the education that I was given is wrong, the same way, a lot of white people have incorrect ideas
Sure.
about Black people, and how do we go forward with open minds so we can come together and be one, because we all are really one race. It's just that we have a different level of melanin that we're technically one color, we just have a different shade of that color,
Right.
Based off our melanin levels in our body.
Well,
Mike,
if I could just respond quickly and say,
go ahead, Rabbi.
In a sense, a lot of this is really a distraction from what really matters.
Exactly.
Right.
And what I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. Something I knew nothing about, I just learned like a week ago, right, is that when the big suburbs were being put up in the early 1950s, right, built into the contracts for these big suburbs, like Levittown, was a clause saying that no homes will be sold to Black people. And in the individual contract of each individual homeowner, there was a clause in the contract that said you were not allowed to sell this house in the future to a Black person. And I did like a back of an envelope calculation that these homes and the rise in property values in these homes was worth over $1 trillion. That was systematically or systemically.
No, systematically is right, because that was a tactic.
Right, excluded from or prohibited to the Black community.
And not only that, land was stolen, because if you even look at the history of, like, say, Manhattan Beach, like Manhattan Beach used to be a predominantly black community, and that land was actually, attacked and stolen from that population, and then later was built upon by, white people to become the community it is today. And I have friends over there who, are connected to a lot of the land owners over there, and they're doing very well. But like, even within my own family, my great grandfather was one of the first black doctors in DC, and he accumulated wealth from that and invested in real estate. And when he died, he had 5 black daughters. Our family, I think the city has found, like, we lost 11 properties within our own family. And if you calculate what that's worth today, it's probably like, at least within these type of DC houses, like $30 to $40 million that was stolen from my family.
Yeah.
And so
while we're sitting around calling each other names, right? And all this, sort of pseudoscience nonsense.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, trillions of dollars are being stolen from people and misappropriated, and that's just like one example that I didn't know anything about until a week ago. So multiply that by 1,000 examples.
Yeah. Gentrification, right?
Jump in really, because originally I remember I mentioned when we went around that the wealth gap is really what we're talking about here now, and it's just interesting, Rabbi. I appreciate you saying you just found out recently. I mean, the fact of the matter is the 2 largest riots in America were perpetrated by white people who burned down Tulsa, Oklahoma, almost 100 years ago because of the wealth. They were exhibiting more wealth than they were entitled to, and it was burned to the ground. And then you get to Cicero in Illinois twice, because one of those laws that you just cited, Rabbi, said that the apartments could not be leased to black people. So a mixed couple was subletted into a home, and that home was that whole neighborhood was burned to the ground by white people. So I guess my point is that this wealth gap thing is really that systemic piece I'm talking about. Tentacles come from there because there's a natural desire to say, if we keep them broke and dumb, then I don't have to worry about. I feel superior because they're broke and dumb. And just one other thing is about this land. So I get uncomfortable when we talk about land being taken from folks without, of course, talking about our Native Americans. So let's just all, put that into perspective as well around thinking of land. It's been a rite of passage for the white man, the European white, forever. So just need to put that out.
Yeah, and we put that out there as manifest destiny, right?
Correct. That was what they taught us in history, right? We all remember that. It was manifest destiny.
Destiny, right? And it was something I know, because I'm an eighth Native American. My grandfather was half, so he grew up in Oklahoma. So I know a lot about learning about what that was and what that was like. And I just happened to be Native American on one side and Hispanic on the other. So I've got it on both ends of what it's like to be on that end of the spectrum. And again, like I said, it was something that was built under the guise of, hey, it's manifest destiny. We have to. It is our right to grow, to take in and consume whatever we can to achieve what the quote unquote gods tell us to do.
And that's a privilege mentality, right? That privilege is just ingrained in the way, and it tentacles out to just, if you keep the person at a certain place, then I'm automatically supreme.
Yeah. So Matt, you wanted to add something? Hop in, brother. You don't have to say anything. Just say what's on your mind.
I'm polite. I raised my hand. No, I've had a few things that have shown up on my heart, and maybe shifting gears a little bit. One, I'm a guy of faith, and I'm also a father, and I'm trying to do my best in this world to educate my son. But one of the things that's been showing up on my heart too lately is about forgiveness, and this goes all around everything. Like, there are people out there, myself included. Like, I grew up admiring comedians like Richard Pryor and George Carlin and like a lot of great comedians. And so, and Eddie Murphy, Raw and Delirious. I love those things. But so I grew up saying some shocking shit, like not good stuff. And if people recorded me, that shit would come back and kick my ass. Now, depending how famous I become, like that could just destroy me. But the thing is, like, I'm trying to teach my son about forgiveness, because I forgive because I need forgiveness too. You know, I believe in that. And so at the same time, I want to teach, I want to help people understand that doing something isn't a life sentence if you're willing to apologize. And because I believe in being a man of valor, and I'm trying to teach that to my son. A man of valor, a person of valor, doesn't always do things right, but we never stop trying to make things right. And I'm passionate about that. Now, I've got a 7-year-old boy. I grew up in Maine. I live in Austin, Texas now. In Maine, we have 1 million people there, and we had one black person. That's pretty much it growing up in Maine. That's it. There was one, his name was Dio. I remember him. He's a great guy. And the thing is, he's a good guy. But I've got this 7-year-old boy, and I love him to death, and I want to teach him the right way, and I don't always know if I'm doing it right. We went to a protest in Austin, Texas, and I'm going to say this first. It's not like I planned to go. It just happened. We were driving. All of a sudden, thousands of people just started walking to the Capitol. And I said, okay, let's go. I was with my wife. We had my boy. We pulled over and we brought him in, and we walked we walked in to the heart of it. And he's seeing all these signs and all these people. And we're trying to tell him, like, he's like, what's going on? And we told him what happened, that a man was murdered by the police. And it was just outrageous. It was horrible. And then, trying to explain to him, like, you're going to see a lot of emotions. You're going to see people raging mad. You're going to see people crying. You're going to see people being very peaceful. I said, but all of this is because this is what happens when people aren't heard over a long period of time. When people aren't heard, then bad things start to happen. People go to extremes. And this is something that doesn't have to happen. This never should have happened, but we're going to go take a look at it. So we walked out there, and I took him to all of it. I'm holding his hand. He started to feel a little tense, but like this just started, and there's some people over in the corner just screaming angry, yelling at the National Guard was there, yelling at cops. We saw some peaceful protesters sitting, just holding signs. We saw some protesters handing out bottled water to everybody, to the people screaming and to the cops. That was amazing. Like, watching some black people just handing out water to both sides, and then some people having conversations on both sides. So trying to get him in the heart of that. And so as we're leaving, because it started to get escalated and he was really starting to get scared, I'm like, all right, now let's start going. And I had him and myself and my wife, we thanked some protesters. Thank you for what you stand for. We believe in this too, and we support you also. Because I also believe too, in asking the people who are leading the protests, how can I best support you? Instead of me just assuming how I should support you. Let me ask you how to support you. Like, because I've seen some dumb shit by some of my white friends trying to support spraying Black Lives Matter on a Starbucks. Like, I saw that. I'm like, no one told you to do that, and that bothers me. So I'm trying to tell my son, like, let's thank people. But then here's the other thing too. I hope I'm doing the right thing. As we're leaving, I also want to teach him too that not all police and National Guard are bad people either.
Exactly.
So we should thank them also. I don't know which one of them is bad. I also don't know which one of the people in the protests are bad either. Like, people are people. So I'm trying to do my best. But here's the fear that I have. As we're leaving, I'm going to a quiet space where the police are and the National Guard are to say thank you, because if it was just me, I wouldn't care. I would talk and say, hey, thanks. But I got my family, and the wrong protester sees me going up to them, talking to them. That's a bad situation potentially. So I waited till it was quiet. We walked up and we gave him a nod. My son waved and said, thank you for being peaceful and protecting us today. And we started moving on. As soon as we moved on, it was 2 white dudes kicking trash and throwing and screaming at these guys like crazy. And I'm like, so I'm trying to do my best as a father. I don't always know if I'm doing my best on this. I feel a little lost in the journey. And so I just want to throw that out there, that sometimes there are like I'm always doing my best, and I just want to know I'm going to make mistakes along the way. And all I ask for too is just some grace if I do make a mistake, because I really do care. I want to make a difference. And so I don't know what point I have to make, but that's where I'm at.
I think that's everybody though here. Everybody sitting here, Matt. I mean, all these people here would not be here if they didn't care. If they didn't at least want to share their thoughts, opinions, experiences, because all of us are different. All of us here are different, but we all come here for one thing, right? We come here for one thing for each one of us, is to share this and to let each other know that even though we've come from a different backgrounds, different lands, we're all human. We're all here to do something together. And nothing's going to change if we don't at least open up these channels for conversation. I mean,
you know what though? It starts with honesty though, and it starts with looking at ourselves too. And so I'm looking at myself too, and I'm saying, look, I've done some dumb shit in the past. I've said some dumb stuff about everybody. Nobody was off limits. I was addicted to praise and attention. And so when I used humor for that in my 20s and when I was younger, and I just pray for forgiveness. And I hope that's why I don't think it's great to punish somebody into the ground. I believe in justice, and justice is about balance, not like vengeance where we keep score, you know? And so, but there are things like, I just want to do the right thing.
Look, Omar or Mike, you guys have been pretty quiet. I would like to hear something from you guys about what you think about this. I mean, Mike, you're always very, very open-minded and very, very.
Yes, he's the reason. He's the reason I'm here. And his energy and Mike, just what you do and how opinionated you are and how passionate you are the reason I am here, buddy. So.
Yeah, Mike, come on, Mr. Padurano. You're the co-host here. Please tell me something.
All right. So my insanity fuels us all, and that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Right. So here's the thing. Right. I stand up for what I believe. I also am not scared to be wrong. I'm not scared to make a mistake and then own it. So I say things wrong. I do things wrong. I always confused, I'm not racist with anti-racism. Future provided me with a dictionary, and I've gone through it many times now. Look, it's about being willing. It's all about wanting to be the best person you can be for yourself. This is such a bigger cause than the 9 or 10 of us sitting at this table. But this is how it starts, right? Yes. Because we're coming from all different backgrounds. We have all received hate in one way or another over the course of our life. Now, my hatred has not been considered the same as whether it's 400 years of what Black people have gone through, whether it's thousands of years of what Jews have gone through or Muslims have gone through. I mean, religious persecution is horrible. And again, these are divisive natures, right? So again, there's this system that's been created on a global scale is all about divisive natures. It's all about turning people against each other, because the minute that they do that, you take your eye off the ball, and these crazy policies go through, these crazy implementations go through, and nobody cares anymore that they're going through. Apparently my 3-year-old is making an appearance.
Okay.
At the end of the day, right, we can go into this, and I really do believe in education as a core. I mean, you can look at the Nick Cannon thing. Okay, so quoting Hitler is probably one of the most disgusting things any living human being can do, right? Because he was a despicable human being. But I also believe that the education system failed him, because what I remember from history, right? And you hear the kid getting the older one pulling away the young one. So hence why I'm on mute most of the time. But the system, right? Like, I don't remember much of high school because 1, I wasn't sober, and 2, I hated school. So let's not pretend, right? But I did study a lot of history, and I've always taught myself, right? I'm honest. This is just who I am, okay. Right? I accept it, okay? I taught myself the difference of history versus American history. I'm okay. Sorry, my 3-year-old almost fell backwards off a chair. So I taught myself the difference, right? Because in school it was, oh, great America came to the rescue and bombed Japan because of Pearl Harbor, and then went to Europe and saved everyone because we were just so magical. Well, okay, but why didn't it talk about the way that Hitler rose up and the way that he twisted and narcissistically and used and manipulated people to elect him into power so that he can turn around and take care of his own personal grudges, right? And then he just started wiping out people. And it was, in a lot of ways, partially his own kind. And there's deep-rooted psychological issues, obviously. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But he's a despicable human being that just destroyed people, right, for his own will and his own wants. And we're not taught that in school today. We're taught what the American government or what, these book companies or whatever it is, whoever is behind all this, what they want us to learn. We're not taught about the Vietnam War and why we screwed up going into it. We're not taught about those things. We're taught that we tried to save something and we didn't succeed. Not that we failed miserably because we're overreaching idiots, right? So I feel like this is where it needs to shift. And that's why I say the education system is a huge core of all this. And I'm not saying that's how we fix the older generations and generations that have already gone through this broken system. But that's where we can fix going forward, right?
Yeah.
And when your 9-year-old child can come home and have an educated debate with you and actually have more direct information than a 40-year-old grown adult, it makes you think and wonder where, how can I learn that too, right? And I feel like that's where it filters up through the education system.
Yeah.
Well, that is so true. Go ahead.
No, because really, first of all, you said I was quiet. That's the first time anyone has ever told me that in a very, very long time.
Me too, actually.
I was like, did he just say that?
I just said that.
Did he? Wait a minute, is that racism against quiet people? I'm just kidding. So really, my thought is, obviously, with all the education, there's a lot of really, really, really key points and beautiful points that are hitting home and impactful. And I think in order, we really need leadership, right? I think that when you see, they say something when I went to corporate America and rose through the ranks, they said, when you see a behavior, always look one layer up, because that's where they got it from, right? Because if the person on top of you is doing it, then it's okay for you to do it, right? And so, really, we need leadership. The majority of, and I don't take this the wrong way, but the majority of people in the world today are followers, and there's a minority that are actually leaders. So, one, we need to have leadership. Now, that's easier said than done, right? Because you can say, well, that person's a leader and that person's a leader, but just imagine if some of the most influential people in the country, were our masses, and just got together and showed this, right, in television and through their actions, right, of coming together with coalitions and actually doing something, right? You can't tell me that a lot of people wouldn't get behind that.
Omar, you're absolutely right, because I was thinking of something and I want to share with it, and everyone, please just answer however you feel fit. It's just like a popcorn style. So I'm going to ask you a question and you tell me whether you believe will happen. So if I take 500 white supremacists, 500 individuals from the Nation of Islam, 500 diehard Jews, they just practice Judaism, that is what they do. 500 Asians, 500 of everything that we can think that possibly they just happen to don't see eye to eye, but we're going to put them in one place, we're going to seal it off, and everything is going to be everything. What do you guys believe would happen? And the reason why I impose this question is because Friday, myself, with some other Aryan Brotherhood people, we advocated and we actually got someone released from prison and had a life sentence. And I tell you guys, this is because there are 500 Aryan brothers in prison. There are 500 Islam Nation of Islam's in prison, but they have a structure about respect and how they interact. All these 2.1 million people in prison with all these different, you guys don't look on the news and see somebody's dying, they're killing them, they're doing this in prison, they're doing this, they have it figured out because they're stuck. They can't leave anywhere. And we have to live with one another. So how do we get this structure? Well, that structure goes like this. If a Hispanic or a white person, they have a disagreement, they will never be able to go to blows over that disagreement because they have to talk to their representatives and address that issue. And we have a court system, who was right and who was wrong. Because if you act individually, the whole thing will go in disarray. And every single day, if you guys look into your prison system, they have it figured out on how to interact with one another with different beliefs.
Interesting.
So that's interesting, Joe. I'm just sitting here listening to so many just amazing pearls coming down, and that was another amazing one, Joe. So thank you. I mean, I think that is something to be said about the forced situation, but I think, Matt went away with it, left on this point around, sort of hope and this ability for us to be able to understand there's two sides to everything in this conversation. So one of the messages that certainly we raised our children on, and we talk about it, and this is really a principle that makes sense for us, is that, it's not just what you did, it's what you're going to do next. And that's what we really advocate as we talk to our children. So that's why I said it isn't simply education as a structured thing. It is enrichment and nurturing with values at the core. And that's why I didn't say, sort of for me, a systemic racism issue is education per se. I think it starts with the heart, head, heart, and guts. For me, that's what I just really appreciate this panel a lot, because it takes us back to that thinking. This is what I'm ruminating on. And even what you just talked about, Joe, that's still it's not what you just did to get you where you are. It's what you're going to do next that gets you where you need to be. And it's really at the core of trying to break down the barriers necessary to have the conversations, the difficult, courageous, scary conversations that bring a person from a why message to a what message. What can I do? You said, how can I do this? You asked permission, Matt. How can I support you? That's important. That's important. How can you do it? So I appreciate those. That's my reflecting moment for the evening.
Yeah, and
that is dope, because of we were having a lot of the companies right now. They're calling us like, okay, what is it that we do with this George? Wait a minute, how do we respond to this? And a lot of them initially, where it was like to us being disrespectful, because the first thing was to do is, let's give $20,000 to Black Lives Matter. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a Band-Aid. Okay, we did something. We're finished now. Let's go about our work. Wait a minute, are your ears clogged? That is not the issue here. That is not the issue. So active listening.
Right.
Definitely. Matt touched on that. And it's a beautiful, when he said that, how can I help? I wish everybody in corporate America said that instead of, I'm going to do this. I think this is good for you. This works for me, is good for you.
Like Matt always says, and this is something he's told me a few times. He asked me this, and it's such a wonderful thing to say, is, how can I serve you? I mean, that opens up so many things when you hear somebody say that. I mean, you're already conceding that you're willing to listen. You're willing to do something that a lot of people wouldn't even consider before you even say something. Those simple words. So that's why I love it when he says that. To me, it means a lot. It really gives me a different level of respect for having these conversations when somebody can say that. Not that, hey, what is it that you need? It's, how can I serve? I mean, amazing.
And that's one thing I want to know is, how can I serve? Because from this moment here, my son is going to be the first one who experiences Kwanzaa and a bar mitzvah if the rabbi will have such.
I love that.
And I think it's just to build on what everyone's saying, not only putting like the people with conflicting ideologies in the room, but putting people of goodwill in a room together and saying that we're going to unite to push this agenda forward. Similar to how we're doing it right now. Like, you know, from my experience in social media, you know, when I'm looking at, you know, building an account, what I'm looking at is not, you know, how do I bring all the people who don't agree with what I'm saying together? It's how do I create a clear brand and a clear message toward a particular audience to, you know, then design how I'm going to push content out to them to build that audience and grow. And so I think it's very similar to the same with building a business around, you know, understanding who your customer is and focusing your business around your particular customer rather than people who wouldn't want to buy your service in the first place. I think with a lot of, as it relates to this problem, how do we get to the people who all see that there's a problem and create, you know, messaging or organization around how those people can come together to create outcomes and results, you know, because you're only going to get so, I mean, I've had conversations with people and, you know, they've come up to me and they're like, thank you, Julian, for having this conversation. You changed my viewpoint and perspective. And that's based off of, I think, just me being very open. But I think in the long term, it's going to be people who see that there's a problem coming together and saying like, okay, let's make a plan where every person who believes there's a problem is going to give 10 people a leg up throughout life. And then, you know, those people who you help, you have to let them know that now it's their responsibility to help 10 other people. And, you know, that creates, you know, a chain reaction of good. And it's not going to happen overnight. And whenever you have a chain reaction of good, you're going to have people who of hate try to destroy that. But you have to be so united and so powerful where those forces are not strong enough to win. Because it's about winning at the end of the day and having your ideology win, where, you know, children are growing up and they're going to understand that we can work together and we can live in a better future.
Yeah. Well, you know, there was a great rabbi who said that we're all on a ladder. And the thing about it is you can go up or you can go down. But the one thing you can't do is stay in the same place. And when we're not thinking, we're going down. When we're not aware that there are issues out there, that there's pain and suffering out there, and that demands a response from us, then we're going down the ladder. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just to broaden the conversation a little bit, there's this really interesting book called Alienated Nation. And it's a book that analyzes the communities that voted for Donald Trump in the Republican primaries, not in the Republican election, in the 2015 election, but in the primaries. In other words, when they had a choice, other Republicans, but they voted specifically for Donald Trump. And the thing about the communities, overwhelmingly, is that they were shattered communities. Damn. You know, the company had left. The white shoe boys took the money from the pension fund and went to the country club. And, you know, the local restaurants closed down, the churches closed down, everything closed down. And these were people that were in despair. They just had nothing. And the reason I mention that is because, Matt, you were talking about seeking forgiveness before. You know, in my mind, I just basically said they're a bunch of dumb rednecks. You know, hey, what are you going to do? But it's people whose lives were shattered. And
hey, Rabbi, excuse me. Rabbi, you know what was so profound of what you just said and what resonated so much is because, ironically, Germany was in such disarray when Hitler came and took and said, okay, we are these people, this is what we do, and this is what we believe in. And that is scary. My heart stopped a beat when you just said that.
Been to Portland recently?
No, I've on the news because I'm restricted. I'm restricted, Rabbi. I can't leave. I just came from federal prison. I can't go back.
No, I was being critical. When you got paramilitary people running around in unmarked cars, time to get nervous.
Very much so, sir. Very much.
Look, I think all of us can agree on this table that this is not only a systemic racism issue. This is just an issue. Right.
Exactly.
This country is at a breaking point.
COVID is setting the stage to make that come to life. We cannot ignore the impact of, people talk about the new normal, but the impact is taking us down this path.
Let's issue a challenge, Mike. I want to issue a challenge with you, and I think we have a job right here because something just spoke to my soul. I think we have a job to restore humanity. And I don't know what it is, but I'm issuing a Restore Humanity challenge to us right now because I'm very creative and this is what I do as a profession. And I haven't fleshed it out yet, but right here is a moment. And I specialize in making moments. And this is what we do, and we have one right here. So I am issuing that Restore Humanity challenge. And we can all have different realms. I'm not saying I'm the leader of it. I'm not saying it is, but this is just my skill set, what I have. And this is what I offer.
Here's the trick. There is no leaders. Here's the trick. Everybody unites together. The trick is everybody has a voice. Here, what the powers that be and the divisive natures of what's been created in this country and around the world from the powers that be are scared of unity because unity and masses can overthrow them, right? This system is set up to be broken. This system is wanting to be broken. This system wants to keep us divided. The more united front that it becomes, the more scared they get. There's a reason that people that are oppressed get rotated every bunch of cycles, right? Whether it's Muslims for a period of time, whether it's blacks, whether it's people of color, whether it's Hispanics and Mexicans, whether we go back to Jews because they're popular to go back to every cycle. It doesn't matter, right? It's always choosing someone to hate and giving us reasons why we should. This is so much deeper than just the systemic issues. This is something that only through social media can be accomplished because being right or left is both wrong, right? You need to be middle ground and you need to see both sides. And there is not a single politician in this race anywhere that is near middle ground. It's so extreme socialism to one side and it's so extreme something to the other. But it's all about keeping the power funnel system, and there's something that needs to shift. The only way that shifts is through a unified front. And it doesn't matter what our background is. It doesn't matter what our religion is. It doesn't matter because we need to thrive off those differences. We need to respect and appreciate those differences. We need to rise above those differences and cherish fellow human beings, right?
Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead, man. No. You jump in on this.
No, I'm sorry.
Look, it's this is something that we need to all stand up, show a united front, and come together to the table with a solution that my 3-year-old is not involved in. I mean, she might have good ideas, but she's not going to come up with the best plan.
And to respect what you're saying, Mike, I think it's just very important to remember how, going back to slavery, how we got to this place in the first place, because that can shed light on how we move forward in the future. Like when America was first established, it wasn't just, black people who are slaves. You had, white indentured servants, and you had a lot of Native Americans here as well. And so you had a group that was, using human labor as leverage in business to accomplish financial feats. And they were coming across issues because if you have injustices, you're going to have people responding and trying to come back. So going to the people who are voting Trump, for example, they were taught, a lot of them, I'm not gonna say all Trump supporters are racist, but I'm saying, speaking to the ones that are, who come from these disenfranchised communities, there was a shift in the old system where it was just going to be about Black slavery, so you can divide and conquer, and you can go to these poor white communities and say that, hey, yeah, your life sucks, but at least you're not Black. Your life, you may not have everything that you want, but at least you're a person with, human identity and human worth. That's why I think it's very interesting that this movement is called Black Lives Matter, because, in our legal system, Black people weren't considered people. And the reason why I think a lot of people are saying all lives matter as a response,
3/5.
that 3/5, absolutely. Because they were taught that Black lives didn't matter. And in today's political climate, it's not politically correct for them to say that, or they may not even consciously know that subconsciously that their inner programming is conflicting with that. So they go to something that is very political to say that, hey, all lives matter. But if they're really meaning that, they would be the biggest advocates for Black Lives Matter, because that would fall under their demographic. So obviously it's not about that. It's about using that as a diversion to conflict with the original statement of that Black lives actually just do matter. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think, I forget the comedian, but he had a great stand-up on it. He was like, we're debating that, like, matters. What's beneath that we exist? You know what I mean? Can Black lives exist? But it's like, no, we're debating whether Black lives matter. And that's a controversial statement. And I think it goes back to just, you can do that and you can teach hate to people when they're not economically franchised. So you give them something to hate so that they can blame that instead of, what's the real problems in society. And I think that's kind of how we have this divide today.
Sure.
I just want to say the challenge Joe threw down is great, because it immediately reminds me of like that leadership philosophy, the spider or the starfish. And if you cut the head off a spider, it dies and it's over. But you cut the leg off a starfish and it grows another starfish. It keeps going. So the movement, like what Joe is talking about, we're all part of this. So if I'm gone tomorrow, the movement keeps going. It doesn't matter. It just keeps going. So we've had a great conversation tonight. I love great chats, but great chats don't mean anything unless
because I believe that action is my spokesperson. That's why what we do is, that's why I issued the Let's Restore Humanity challenge, because I'm talked out. I've talked forever. And I action is my spokesperson. So I invite everyone.
So maybe we got a few minutes left. Can we all go around? Maybe start with Future and do just that. What are we thinking on that and close out?
Yeah, most definitely. So Future, if you want to start, please do. I mean, it is important because, again, like what everybody's been saying is, it's great to have these conversations, right? I'm like you, each one of you. I believe it. It's great to have these conversations, but what happens to them if we do nothing with them? So please, Future, go ahead.
Okay, so I think what's important is action, right? But I'm going to add another word to that, and it's sustainable action, right? Because I could sit here and say, I'm in for the human kindness. We're doing a week of human kindness. We're doing a day of human kindness. And if that human kindness challenge doesn't continue with me, and then I pass it on to my daughter, then the challenge dies, and with it, the systematic changes die too. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind too. If we're going to do it, it needs to be done right, and doing it correctly would be, how do we do it sustainably and long lasting, that will be forever, right? And I think the thing that I'm doing, because my belief is it starts with me first. I am because you are. That's Ubuntu, right? And the sooner people could understand that we are truly all in this together, the faster we will be able to go. So I am on a mission, like I said, helping educate people on SEL and trying it to get into the early childhood daycare centers and early childhood providers, because that is where at least some of this will begin. As on top of, I'm also helping as best as I can to educate people that are linked to me on LinkedIn, doing videos and posting stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that I know that unfortunately, even though there's Google, people don't know.
Okay.
And I need to begin with you on your journey where you're at. I'm not going to be mad at you for not knowing. I'm going to help you know so that we can go on this journey together.
Wonderful. Miss Susan?
So that's a great pickup again. That's exactly what my mission is. When on May 25th, which happened to also be my 13th wedding anniversary, my second marriage, love of my life. But that's why the day sticks in my head, because that was also the day on the 26th when I woke up and said, silence is no longer an option. So this is something that we do certainly in our corporate structures, even around how we talk with our kids. They have the sensibilities and we gloss over it and move too fast. So my commitment was made then, and it remains, to meet your challenge, Joe, to be able to say silence is not an option. And that goes for me and anyone who I'm speaking with and dialoguing with. There is something that somebody can learn from the pain in your journey. The other piece is that, you know, I'm writing books now, I'm lecturing again, and I'm working with corporate America. I was in some of the top names already, and I'll be going into more. I'm going to open my calendar more. I had locked it down to only be part-time, but I think I'm going to go on, take some more engagements and continue to go into corporate America and talk about the brick wall, not just the glass ceiling. And I leave you with this thoughts, guys, you know, question with confidence, challenge with grace, shut up with wisdom, and speak up with tenacity. And so to me is what the next step has to be, more than just saying that. I'll say it once more. Question with confidence.
Say it one more time, because that was hot. Just one more again.
This is mine. I wrote it 25 years ago. And
you need to drop this in the comments, because that's too good to not share.
All right. So question with confidence, challenge with grace, shut up with wisdom, and speak up with tenacity. Silence is no longer an option. And I can send those to you. I have them here.
Yes, I love that.
Hey, Joe, don't you know a brand that would throw that on some T-shirts?
I'm taking her to the next meeting. I was just sitting there. I'm about to DM her right now. I'm just sitting there like, I got 4 brands looking for that shit right now.
You got my email. My company's name. My company's name is LCA Enterprises.
Let's get it.
That's a high holiday sermon right there for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Miss Childs, I get you your reparations one way or the other.
Well, I will send you out when my website is launching next week, so I'll make sure you and get this information. It's how I do most of my work with young people. We talk about that, and I'm going to bring it to life.
Omar, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, man. I think the challenge that Joe put out, I think it's solid, and I think I agree with everyone. And Susan, I tell you, I was digging that. I was feeling it. I was vibing. It was resonating. All the things. That was a solid. That was good. And like everyone said, I think we just got to do it. You know, like Nike says it best. You know, you got to do it, and Lotto says it even better. You got to be in it to win it, right? So I think we got to get in it. We just got to do it, but we just got to have I think like everyone is really saying like a purpose, so that when we're doing it together, right, that we're going in the same direction. You know, like it's not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like we got to do it at the right time, not necessarily the right time, but at least in the right direction. You know, let's head in that direction. I think if we identify that direction where it's clear for all of us, right, then it's easier for us to know what is the next step for me. What's the next step for Susan, for Future, for Julian, for Gabe, for Matt, for the Rabbi, for Mike, for Joe, right? Because just because my first step is to the right, that doesn't mean everyone's first step is to the right. You know what I mean? But
one exercise real fast before we go, because everything is going to conclude. I would ask everyone to close your eyes just for one brief second, and I'm gonna give an affirmation, and then after I say that word, please open your eyes. So close them just briefly for 1 second. And this is what everyone is looking for. So, and I'm going to utter a word, which is diversity. Now open your eyes. And this is what it looks like. And these are the solutions.
Could I just add, I'm an old-fashioned kind of a guy. Vote, get people to vote, get Joe Biden to take a woman of color as a vice presidential candidate. And, you know, with John Lewis passing away, speak the truth.
Truth over tribalism.
Yes.
Truth over tribalism. I don't care what the Jews say. I don't care what the blacks say. If it's not the truth, I don't agree.
Joe Biden lives 7 miles away from me. If you scream loud enough, he might hear you.
Joe, I got some things to say to you, Joe. Can you hear me?
I love that. So I want Julian. I mean, what would you want to do? I mean, what is something that you would want to keep doing to push to help this initiative that we're all sitting here talking about?
Well, I feel like every day I get on a devotional with one of my best friends, and we pray. And there's been one key thing that's been the central thing to our devotionals, which is keep God's presence in mind. And I think that as we all go forward, everyone has their own schedule, everyone's busy. And so you have to know who you are, and you have to know what your light is, and you have to continue to develop your light. So when you walk into the room, if you walk into a dark room, light is impossible to ignore. And so as you continue to work and develop your light, then you will come across other people whose lights are also shining. And you can see how your lights that are moving in the same direction can come and work together. And sometimes it's the right thing to do at the right moment based off of where both of you are in life. And sometimes it's not, and you're just meant to be allies, and maybe in the future it would be the right time. But I think as you work on yourself, you work on your light, you work on how you can help other people where you see injustice, and you have, compassion and empathy for your fellow man, that these are the fundamental blocks that lead to change. Like, for example, with what you and Mike are doing here, Gabe, you're bringing together people who are not just having a conversation, but I feel like we're connected now. So who knows what initiatives, as we all are our own individual lights, will come of it, where we can create opportunities for other people to better the world. And you don't know, maybe it's the big thing that sets everything in motion and just completely changes the world and goes down in the history books. Or maybe it's coming together and helping 5 people, and in those 5 people's lives, their lives were changed for the better. And maybe someone somewhere else in some other part of the world did the same thing. And you have a bunch of different people who have their own lights and are combining their lights, just going out and being lights for other people. And I think as we do that, that is the way where we can have sustainable change, as Future says, because we're building off of these little micro commitments based off of who we already are.
Yeah, and it's, again, I think the theme that a lot of us have said, and I've heard from just about every single one of you, is education. I think all of us are educators in our own right. And I think that's how we're going to sustain what we're talking about here, is education, and who we educate, how we go out and educate, who we connect with, what we share. I think all of us have that calling inside of every single one of us to want to go out there and do that. I mean, I felt that calling myself here, where I feel like I want to go out and not only do what I'm doing here, but taking it to the next level, using using what I'm learning from every single one of you here, that every single thing that I've learned from this conversation is something that I can go teach somebody else. And I think that's what it needs. We need to pass along these wisdom and these experiences, write our own history books, write how we go out there and we teach people, how we change the perception of what we see as racism and how we see each other as people. I think that's the next step for all of us. And I think every single one of you want to take that next step, or we wouldn't be here having this conversation. Every single one of you has it. And I see in the glimmer of everybody's eyes here as we talk, the way they concentrate, the way we sit, the way we listen, the way we're actively learning from each other, is that we can go out and change the world. And it's just going to take each one of us going out there and doing action in any way, shape, or form. And I love that each one of you want to do that, especially Joe. Thank you for putting that out there. I think that's an important thing to talk about, an important thing to put out there to kind of hopefully hold each one of us accountable for doing that.
Let's get it.
I would love that.
Accountability, man. Let's get it, man. Enough is enough. We have children, we have families, you know. I firmly believe in legacy. And how I get to this is I'm enthused about what people say about me when I am not in the room.
Yeah.
And that is my actions and that is my legacy. And that is just what I do. You know what I'm saying? People never remember what you did for them, but they always remember how you made them feel.
Maya Angelou,
to make sure everybody feels like they're the only individual in the room.
Dr. Maya.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. That is one of my favorite freaking sayings in the world. And that's why I want to go out and help. That's why I want to go out and help teach, not only with what my skill is, which is writing, to help other people learn how to do that creatively, learn teenagers and people coming into their own. That's going to be one way I can use my own skills to help teach and craft. And who knows, maybe I touch that next Maya Angelou, that next person who goes out there and is able to change the world with her words, their words. And I think that's what's really powerful. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, brother. I'm hyped right now. What about you, Mr.
Yeah, let's get it. Because I keep on, I know you guys keep on looking back. I'm trying to figure out where future is, because I'm like, my son hasn't set yet. So I'm looking back like, where is she?
I'm in Milwaukee, north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay, I'm in a place where they say it never rains in Southern California, according to Tony.
That's it. Mike, Matt, y'all got anything to add, brother? Please. Okay. Give me something.
Let Matt go.
Your mouth has been open this whole time.
No, let Matt. You do it, man. Matt, go ahead.
Edge of your seat doing this thing.
Take me out on a high, baby. Take me out on a high. Come on.
Matt, go first, bud.
All right, Mike. I gotta tell you, you're a wonderful father. I love watching you over there navigate with all those kids. So I just gotta say, you're a beautiful human being, man. I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
I've been inspired by what all of you have said, and again, I gotta talk about what I can do on my end and what my superpower is. And I gotta believe I've shared this with Gabriel before. As a guy of faith, I always go by this scripture. It's in my LinkedIn headline, 1 Samuel 17:48. It says, David ran towards Goliath. And it makes me wonder, what are the giants in my life that I should be running towards? You know, who runs towards like a 9-foot giant? It's just some stones, nobody rooting for you. And so any of my clients, they get two things from me as a gift. They get a slingshot and they get an actual stone that I've had shipped from Israel, from the Valley of Elah. And, you know, for me, my slingshot and my stone is my ability to be vulnerable and share stories. So like what I did with all of you, I can't go out there and just start preaching to people. Like, I have to lead with my own stuff. And so I share my vulnerable stories and say, hey, here's something that I went through. Here's something I did, a mistake that I've made, or a lesson I've learned. Here are the takeaways I had from it. Now here's my challenge for all of you. And I put it back in my audience. And so I want to create conversations, but I start with my vulnerability. That's my superpower. That's what I'm able to do. So I make a commitment to all of you to continue having conversations that matter, which means not all conversations are going to be safe. I'm willing to have conversations where I'm going to lose followers. I'm totally okay with that. because at the end of the day, I just want to find my tribe, my people. And those are people who are willing to have conversations where they're willing to be wrong. And so I don't want to just live in an echo chamber, but I do want to find people who align with my values. And so I'm going to keep sharing my message, and I'm committed to that, even when it might not make me a very popular person. So that's my commitment to the group. I love all of you. I think you're beautiful human beings, and I'd be grateful to connect with each and every one of you. If there's anything I can do to serve any of you in this group, please, by all means, I'd be grateful.
Mr. Padurano.
So I'm a little crazy. Everybody knows, anybody that knows me knows that, right? Like I'm a little nuts. So my goal is, right, I want to change the world forever. I'm going to make this world better. I'm going to bring people together. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care what they can materialistically take from me. None of that stuff matters. At the end of the day, I want my children to grow up in a different world. I want my children to grow up in a world where everyone is the same. Everyone has the same opportunities. And I'm nuts enough to try and make it happen. And I'm going to do everything in my power to do it. Step one is to continue these conversations every 2 weeks. Eventually grow it into a weekly conversation. Eventually take it from anti-racism to anti-hatred, right? And do more get to the root of hatred. Because it's not only racism. This is a deeper issue, right? This is real hatred issues, and we need to get to the bottom of those before we can solve. Well, my kids are nuts. Before we can solve the race issue, we need to get to the hatred issue, right? So that's step one for me. Two, anybody that's had a conversation with me other than about this knows that I've been working on redoing the global education system. And I'm going to continue that mission until I accomplish that as well. It's time for the schools to be rewritten. It's time for education to change forever. It's time for it to be put into the 21st century and beyond. And it's time to involve real education, learning about every religious belief, learning about all differences so that people can truly unify through appreciating differences rather than always be divisive. There's nothing wrong with learning different opinions. We need to learn different opinions, but we're taught to follow the divisive natures. And that's the problem with our society. That's the problem with humanity since the beginning of time. We're suckers. We always fall into following the leader, and we always want to find divisive natures to follow. And it's unfortunate because we're always told to pick a side rather than choosing what's right. And that's it. And that's my follow through on this. I'm not going to stop until it happens. And I will continue it because I just don't care. I'm just going to do it.
There you go, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's how you almost end on a high. Okay. Here's how we're going to end on a high, guys. First of all, I just want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, every single one of you, Future, Susan, Omar, Joe, Matt, Julian, Rabbi, and Mike, each and one of you hold a special place in my heart. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to have this conversation and bring something more than just words to the table. Bringing something more. You're bringing your hearts, you're bringing your souls, you're bringing every part of you, and that's what I love. So thank you, every single one of you, for doing this evening. I don't know what to say except all the gratitude in the world. My heart tingles right now because this is happening in front of me and I'm getting a little emotional. So thank you guys again so much. And it's just me wearing my heart on the sleeve, but I know I feel better and I'll sleep better tonight knowing that there's more people in the world who care about what we're doing. It's each one of you here this evening. So thank you again, guys, so much. Thank you, Mike, again, for putting this together. I love you with all my heart, brother. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Robert. Again, Julian. Each one of you have brought a different piece of what I hold inside and that I'll cherish going forward for the rest of my life. So thank you again, guys, every single one of you. And let's all keep in touch. So
likewise.
Thank you, everybody, again, for watching. Everybody who's been part of the show. You guys, again, are the lifeblood of what we do here and what we will continue to do. And I will keep pushing forward with these things as long as you'll have me. So thank you, everybody. Everybody sit tight. Everybody else watching at home, thank you so much again for watching the show. I will be back tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, with my guest, Charles Gentry. And we will be back in again in another 2 weeks with another 4-hour roundtable.
Let's
Goodbye,
get it.
everybody. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jim.